Hello, everybody. Calling all Lasso and leadership fans. Join us on this journey to a better, kinder, and more compelling way to lead. We're going to take you through a journey of the hit series Ted Lasso. We're going to explore what leadership lessons exist, and there are tons. We always have a spoiler alert. We will assume you've watched each episode that we tackle, and we do aim for about 15 minutes per podcast, and we sometimes leave you with something to do at the end as well.
And I am Jason Rogers. I'm co-host of this program, and I'm the head of school at Rundle. And simply, probably most importantly for the context of this podcast, I'm a Ted Lasso enthusiast. And I'm super excited to share this love of Ted, Lasso, and leadership with the world.
Nice. And I'm Garth Nichols, educational leader at Havergal College School. I sit at the senior leadership team, but I still teach. And of course, I still coach. And my basketball team is heading into championship weekend and championship week ahead. So we put this podcast together to really, nerd out, chat about the series Ted Lasso, but also leadership. We're going to have a lot of fun pulling out leadership lessons that may be unnoticed, underappreciated, but also certainly ones that are really fun and make you think about your own leadership practices, regardless of whether or not you live in education or whatever industry you're in. So basically, as Jason likes to say, we've created a public Ted Lasso fan club, book club, and global conversation, and we are actively trying to get Jason Sudeikis on the show. Jason Sudeikis plays the main character, and we always talk about who our favorite characters are. So, Jason, you still sticking with Roy Kent?
As always, it's Roy Kent forever. I've decided I'm not changing throughout the course of this, no matter what. And in this episode, Garth, I love his straight talk. I love the moment in the dressing room near the start of this episode when the players are really bummed out and Ted has to ask them, why are they so blue? And Roy comes back with a classic Roy tirade, 4-letter words explaining that the team has gone through several years, 60 years without beating Everton FC. And they're just not into it. And I love more than anything else this opportunity where Roy gives direct feedback to his boss. He's pissed off, but at least he's telling the truth. And this is a reason I love this guy. He is 4-letter words and truth. That's his motto. What about you, Garth? You've been flip-flopping, and I suspect that's the case again.
Yeah,
in this episode.
I continue to do that. For me, it's Nate. Nate really stands out. But it's this episode landed differently with me. I find Nate very problematic. But what he voices throughout this episode are all the anxious thoughts of what it means to be a leader. So, for example, when he's asked his opinion on what to tell the guys by Ted himself, I mean, he just goes into this shame spiral. And what would happen if he fails? And he says, if I do that and it doesn't go well, that you won't like my idea, that you will hate me, that you will fire me. I have to move back with my parents. Then they'll be ashamed of me. Then everyone finds out back home and laughs at me until my face melts. Yeah. I mean, maybe not exactly like that, but we've all had thoughts of doubt, if we actually put our neck out as a leader and what failure might look like, sound like, and feel for us. But anyway, so for me, it's Nate, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the leadership lesson. But enough of listening to me. What are our listeners saying? How are your mom and dad?
My mom and dad are actually really good, and they're actually still listening to whole episodes, which is really nice. When we connect each day, I really am able to dig in on leadership with them, and that's been fun. And I also understand that their neighbors are listening. So I want to give a shout out to my parents' neighbors in the condo.
Hey, neighbors in the condo.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting moment for us all. However, maybe even better yet, I'm excited to announce that Livewire Calgary has taken interest, and we're going to be featured in an article by them next week. Pretty good news, hey Garth? We're doing it.
Yeah. You've got a voice and face for radio, so I hope they capture your best side.
Okay, so in other big news, we've been talking about our viewer base, and we have listeners in 5 of the 7 continents. So this coming week, we're going to be direct marketing to Antarctica and South America. We'll see if we can pick up listeners on those continents as well. But what about you, Garth? You always get better feedback than I do. What are people saying?
Well, that's amazing. So no matter where you're listening, hello, thank you for your support. I have, some great people reached out. Had my good friend and colleague, Leslie Macbeth, reach out, say she really enjoyed particularly your point about last episode, the point about practice, that she's actually used that before. So that's great. And then a shout out to Denise LaMarche on the Best Coast for giving us the great feedback. So she writes, I started listening because I'm a huge Lasso fan, but she also sees the connection to leadership and to parenting. And in episode 5 and 6, we kind of dabbled in that. And we couldn't agree more. So she also sent along a clip that shows up in season 3 with Rebecca. Now, it's a far way off for us right now, but Denise, if you're listening and if you're up for it, come on the pod. Tell us more about that clip when we get there. You're welcome on the pod.
Right on. Right on. Speaking of coming on to the pod, Garth, I know you've got big news about our next episode, so let's tease that before we jump into today's episode.
Yeah, this is really special for me. I'm happy to say that next week's episode on the podcast will feature someone who I had the opportunity to learn with and from, someone who I look up to as a leader, Kathy Bishop. Kathy is the associate professor and program head in the MA in leadership and values-based leadership at Royal Roads, and I just completed their certificate in values-based leadership, and it was really incredible. I was quite moved by definitely some of the reading, but also some of the activities that she led us through. So she is a Lasso fan. I reached out to her. She's going to come on the pod next week, give us her opinion on episode 8, and I just can't wait. So yeah, it's going to be fun. So with that in mind, let's jump into episode 7. So Jason, why don't you start with a brief summary of the episode?
Sure. And this will be real brief because I know most of our listeners will watch it and will remember it. But this episode's official name is Make Rebecca Great Again. For those of you who have not recently watched it, let me jog your memory. The episode's framed around 3 things. First, the team's set to play Everton FC. And as mentioned before, they haven't beat them in 60 years. Spoiler alert, they beat them and hit the town in a karaoke-fueled night out. Rebecca comes on the trip and meets up with an old girlfriend nicknamed Stinky, who may or may not become a love interest of our main man, Ted Lasso. And finally, on a sadder, more somber note, Ted signs his divorce papers, and we start to see his battles with anxiety start to emerge. I think that about sums it up. Garth, now let's get on to leadership, because this is about Lasso and leadership. What did you take from the episode in the space of leadership?
Yeah, thanks. Great summary. So this episode, as I said earlier, is a pretty difficult one for me because I think that this is an inflection point for Ted and for Nate in particular. And I do think Ted kind of drops the ball here with Nate. And let me tell you a little bit about why. So at the 15-minute mark, Ted is, he's not looking his regular self. He's dealing with the divorce. He's clearly been drinking. He's struggling with his emotions. And Nate is, putting things under the door, like his thoughts. And he opens the door and he kind of yells at him. He says, go away, get out of here. It's past curfew. And that is not a behavior that Nate is used to. And I don't think he's used to Ted looking like that. Ted passes out. Next day, he does go to Nate and he says, listen, I'm sorry. And we need to address this. He apologizes. He says, I've read your notes. He validates his thinking and then gives him a chance in the spotlight. And Ted says to Nate, I can't say this to them, what you are about to say. And Nate says, but they need to hear it. So Nate takes that on. And I think that's great. And he hears Ted, believing in others. He's apologizing. He introduces Nate. He sets him up well. The team supports him. But there's something in here, there's an element of radical candor, which is great. And there's that beautiful moment with your guy, Roy Kent, who says, don't read your notes, say it to my face.
Love that.
And he does. And that's like a lot of courage from Nate.
Yep.
Listen, the result of this is that the team wins. They turn a corner. Karaoke ensues. But there's a lingering question here about the way that Nate has done this under the watchful eye of Ted and Beard, who are noticeably silent and at the end kind of encourage Nate. So I'm left with this question. How could this excellent use of candor, this excellent feedback get done without the horrible language, the misogyny, the curse words, and to have Ted and Beard just let that go? And I think this is where we see Nate slide to, the darker side in terms of where he goes for the next couple of seasons. But there are good things in here about radical candor. There are good things in here about saying the unsaid that needs to be said. But how do we do this with kindness, that balance of challenge and support, as opposed to like insulting and dismissing others and motivating people through anger?
This is such a crazy and human moment, Garth.
Yeah.
I hate to jump in, but it's so compelling and I find it so curious. I'm left wondering, why did they empower Nate to, make these statements, and why they sit silently by? In short term, I think we agree it worked. They won. But wonder in the long term, what did Nate learn? And I think this will start to unfold in seasons 2 and season 3, how to impact the team. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I think it's just, we have to reflect on the fact that as leaders, we're human. Like these are all human moments in the decision. Obviously, Ted's compromised in his thinking and his emotions because of what he's going through. But it'd be really interesting to see behind the scenes in this moment for them.
Yeah, and I think too, Ted has an approach of, maybe the room will give Nate the feedback that it doesn't need to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps Nate hasn't been, his ears haven't been tuned to listen for that just yet. So, but anyway, so those were some of the pieces for me, and this again was problematic episode for me. But what were the leadership moments for you, Jason?
Yeah, it's maybe I'll lighten it up a little bit here, Garth. After you brought us down,
please do. Leadership's hard. Leadership's hard.
It might just be me, but I love the celebrations in this episode. I really think the singing in the dressing room after the victory, you can't help but love that moment. They unite around the anthem, "We're Richmond till we die." After that rousing rendition, Roy Kent, my guy, tells everybody that they're going to celebrate and rub it in the city's face. And that elevates everybody, and Keeley, has done some of these promotional videos, and that drives them to go off and do karaoke. And there's something about showing vulnerability with your peers that builds camaraderie. And I think that's actually a really beautiful thing about, doing an acting class or doing karaoke. And I think that's what's happening here. So anyways, speaking of singing, Garth, I couldn't help but wonder throughout this, do you have a favorite karaoke song?
Yeah, well, I do have a favorite, but they differ depending on the situation. So sometimes I go between like The Gambler. Sometimes I lean into Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and then there's 9 to 5, Dolly Parton.
Oh, solid.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but these are ones that get the crowd going, and they strong. These are strong female artists who are singing and writing these songs. So I'd go with 9 to 5, Dolly Parton.
I mean, if speaking personally, I'm terrified of karaoke. I have to say,
Shocker.
I've never done it. Never done it in my life because I think I'm a terrible singer. However, as the listeners of this podcast, as my witness, I'm going to jump out there and take a chance. Before the end of this season, I'll do karaoke with my team. I'll let you know which song I choose and how it goes. What do you think?
I'm in. But wait, are you doing karaoke on your own with your team watching, or are you doing a joint karaoke? Either way, I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay. I'd love if you come along. And I think what we should do, Garth, is your next trip to Calgary, my next trip to Toronto, wherever we meet next. Let's do it together and let's do a listening party. I'll bring all our fans. My mom and dad will check their calendar, and I'll get back to you on a date that might work.
All right. If you are listening to this, hold Jason to account and tell us what your favorite karaoke songs are too. Love to hear.
Yeah, let's do that. Awesome.
All right, let's pivot. Let's close with our leadership challenge. Above and beyond the karaoke piece, what do you think people could try out here?
Okay, Garth, I'm going to take this on this week. Here's what I'm thinking. As a leader, ask yourself, where will you show vulnerability to your team? Just like when they go to karaoke and when Ted has an anxiety attack, when will you be seen as being really human this year? Write it down and hold yourself to account. Maybe it's karaoke, or maybe it's, performing at the gala, or maybe it's just being human in a meeting where you wouldn't otherwise be human. Let's find places to do that in our leadership. I think our teams will benefit.
I really like that. I hope people give it a shot. For me, I'm at my most vulnerable probably when I'm coaching. To be honest,
yeah,
with you.
Right. Totally.
I just care about these athletes so much. But yeah.
Well, before we close, Garth, we always rename the episodes. It's actually one of my favorite parts of every episode. So, Garth, I'm dying to know what did you come up with this homework?
Well, Let It Go. It is the karaoke song that's sung by Rebecca. Let It Go. They've let the past go when they beat Everton for the first time in, as you say, 60 years. Let it go. Ted signs the divorce papers and now has to deal with those emotions as opposed to putting them off. And Nate, he really lets it go in this rant. Consider what it means to let it go. And it's a great song. Come on. It's an anthem. Yeah. It's a banger. What about you, Jason?
Yeah. Oh man, well, first of all, thanks for that. I can tell you've been thinking about it all week, Garth, and that is some deep thinking. And I think let it go comes back. We're going to be talking about be a goldfish soon, and that is about
Yeah.
letting it go in leadership too. And I think it's a really important trait and skill to have. So well done. I'm gonna have trouble beating that. Mine that I came up with was workplace stink. Okay. We're introduced Rebecca's
Nice.
friend and Ted's new love interest. Her nickname is Stinky, but on a deeper level, this episode's really about providing deep and caring radical candor to each other, even if it's a little bit stinky.
Yeah. I love it. Let's go with that because leadership
Yeah.
can stink too, right?
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear what you think about the title, but also what you've learned from episode 7. So a reminder that if you do like what you hear, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. If we're ever going to get Sudeikis on here, we're going to need your support. Get the word out there. And please do tune in next week with our special guest, Kathy Bishop from Royal Roads University. So until then, as we like to say, keep leading the lasso away.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.